Welcome to another video coverage of This Week in Rails. I'm Dave Kimura, and today we have Greg bringing us the changes. And again, this is not a production that I create, I simply provide the video coverage of it. And if you would like to receive your own copy of This Week in Rails, you can go to roll.hey.com/this.week.in.rails. So let's dive into this week's changes. And so for the first item, add column information to exceptions inside ERB templates. And this one is so cool, and I'm really glad I made it in. And if we look at the pull request from Aaron Patterson, before we would get some kind of line highlighting that we had an error, but now we are getting more specific information where the column information is now getting highlighted as well. And that's going to be really great, especially in cases where you have chained in multiple conditions. And if you get some kind of undefined method for nil class, then you're going to be able to see which item it was that actually triggered the error. And the next one's really cool because I've been bitten by this one a few times, and it's not until I'm later down in the process until I realize that something was wrong. So it is the validate options when managing columns and tables and migrations. And this one essentially means that whenever you have a migration file, it's going to do some checks to see if you're passing in options that are not valid or not implemented. And this one is best explained if we go into the pull request and if we look at some of the resolved issues. So for example, if you're creating a new table called things and you have an integer column A and you're passing the index true, then that's going to create the index properly and you won't have any issues. However, if you are adding a column with things, you're adding the column B, it's an integer, and you are saying index true, the index will not get created here. And so you may think that you're adding the database optimizations here, but that's not the case. That index is going to get silently ignored. So having an earlier warning of this instead of finding out down the road is going to be very beneficial. And the next one's pretty interesting because it is just a documentation update saying that we should use the to_fs or the to formatted string instead of to_s on ranges. And this is interesting because I think this is a situation where we have language meets framework. And what I mean by that is we have ourselves in a situation where Ruby 3.1 provides some optimizations to the toString on some of the core classes. So in order to take advantages of the optimizations, we are recommended to use the to_formatted string, at least right now for the ranges. And the next one, add Rails application deprecators, is going to be pretty interesting, and I think overall great for the lifespan of the Rails framework because it allows us to then group all of the deprecation notices kind of in one place. So if we are wanting to see on a Rails upgrade what all the deprecations are, then we have some kind of managed collection entry point to see what those are. And ultimately that could help us manage our applications in the long term. As we are upgrading with new Rails releases, we're able to see more information and have greater visibility about the deprecations that are coming. Otherwise, we could find ourselves in situations where something has been deprecated, however, we weren't aware of those deprecations because that area of the application we were testing or developing in, we never ran into them. And lastly, we got an update to Turbo to 7.2.2. We did skip version 7.2.1 because there was an issue with pushing up the wrong version to NPM, so they did go ahead and do a 7.2.2. And so with this change, we got a few bug fixes. And remember, if you are using the Turbo Rails gem in your application and you do a bundle update to the newer version, I believe it's 1.3.1, also make sure you're doing the yarn update to also update the Turbo JavaScript library. And for the past week, we had 18 contributors to the Rails framework, as well as some new contributors. So I really appreciate all the new contributors, as well as those who have helped Rails over the years. Well, that's all for this video coverage of This Week in Rails. Thanks for watching.